I'm honored to introduce Steef-Jan. He needs no introduction as he's a well-known face in the integration space. Steve has almost 20 years of experience in custom .NET solution development, overseeing large enterprise integrations, designing and building APIs and cloud solutions. He is very active in the community as a blogger, author, and a global public speaker. You must have seen and heard him in the Middleware Friday sessions, and he is also a key contributor for serverless nodes. He is an MVP for the past 9 years. And one another interesting fact about Steve is that he is very passionate about marathon, and he has already completed 5 out of 6 major marathons. So let's hear from Steve for the session now. Over to you, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, so I was here a few weeks ago running the marathon, so I was kind of getting energetic just as I'm now, walking around and getting ready to do the run. So I completed a couple of weeks ago and I was pretty proud of my accomplishment. And it's kind of similar to monitoring though, because if you look at the route, there are several police officers doing security and see that no one is actually interfering with the runners. That would be the official runners, the professional runners, but also us amateurs basically. But you also see mechanics. So if someone falls down, throws up, or something goes on, then he has to do something as well. So you see those too. And the other interesting fact was that, during our briefing of the route and everything, there seems to be also marshals at the curve almost at the end. And what their job is to monitor anyone without a race bib. Because apparently there are people almost at the end trying to get with their running clothes, except no bib, trying to finish it and get one of the medals that I'm holding up as well. So that happens too. So though even with this race, you have something like challenges with regards to a race, and that's also monitoring. So okay, I've been introduced. If you might know, okay, who's this guy, running marathons? I work for Codit, so I call myself an Azure technology consultant, so I do a lot of consultancy. We're based out of Belgium. We have some branch offices around. We have them in Holland, where I'm from. We have them in the UK. We have them in Portugal. We have them in Switzerland, France, and we have a product group in Malta even. So we're quite all over Europe, and we focus on a couple of things like Azure, integration, and IoT. I'm an Azure MVP. I write for InfoQ, so I also am looking into other cloud type of technologies on the Google platform, on AWS, all kinds of stuff. So I'm a bit more broad-minded. I'm also a member of the Azure user group, so I'm a board member of that. I'm also organizing Lowlands, which is an event that I organize together with Eldred, who's here in the front, who will speak later on. So we've done something like that. So I'm all versed doing stuff. I do serverless node, and also, if you're aware, I do Middleware Friday. But okay, what's the story for today? What I'm going to talk about. So I want to share you basically my vision on monitoring. So I've, through the years, I've always been involved somehow with monitoring and keeping solutions stable, if it's either BizTalk or now even cloud native or hybrids. And there are some challenges to it. So I want to share that with you as well. Something around people, process, products, and also what kind of products and services should you choose or what's functional for you or could help you with your requirements. So I'll talk a bit about that and then I'll do a recap. So let's look some of cloud native and hybrid integration. So I have some real world cases, and I also have some cases that I just sometimes use for my Middleware Fridays. So I have a couple of those. So I'm going to throw more solutions at you. You've already seen lots of them, and you're going to get more. So let's look at this type of cloud native integration. What I kind of wanted to do is, you could also call it a serverless solution, but it's basically cloud Lego, right? So you have all these pieces you tie together, and it kind of forms a process. So for instance, you ingest order kind of notifications through an API, it goes to a queue, there's a logic app listening, a logic app pushes it to, let's say, a Cosmos DB instance, comes into a collection. Basically, you can trigger, so you can leverage something that's called chains feed. Then you can monitor on that and even do something alerting. So this is kind of a solution I thought of, and I'll get back to this later. But this is a cloud native solution. You can think about an order process. Another one could be, because this is Lego, right? So you can build all kinds of things. I could say, okay, I work in a bank. Someone come up to me, he wants a loan. I push that message into a queue. Then there's a logic app that calls out to a machine learning model, because you can, in machine learning, build a model and expose this with an endpoint. So this is possible. So you can reach out to that endpoint by providing certain payload, some details you require, and then it can predict if someone is able to pay off his loan or not. So basically, you could enrich a little bit the assessment. The assessment goes to another service bus topic. There's multiple logic apps listening to it, putting something maybe in CRM, maybe call out to a function, or even push that into a document collection again. So again, this is just kind of a Lego type of solution you could build. Then you can do something like AI. So you can even have, like, for instance, Flow or Power Platform is pretty suitable for your devices. So I could say, okay, I'll click on an expense. Could be a parking ticket, or maybe you have dinner with your customers. You push that, basically, you make a picture of that expense, the receipt, you push it into a blob storage, and you could raise the event. So you've heard about Event Grid, right? So Event Grid pushes an event out to one or multiple subscribers. Could be a function, pushes that to cognitive services. So Microsoft has a very big AI type of platform with tons and tons of services, and one is computer vision. Using optical character recognition, you get the amount out and you can further process that. So that's another example of a cloud-native integration solution. What about a real cloud-native type of solution? So I've built this like 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, I was presenting here in Integrate as well, talking about the value that Logic App could add to the business. And what I kind of created is a solution for a environmental control company in the Netherlands that provides devices for environmental control either in greenhouses, so we're very popular in building greenhouses, but also growing flowers in them, vegetables, etc. And what this company basically want to do, they want to consolidate and put this knowledge around their devices and stuff into on-demand training. And they pushed it into LMS 365. Actually, as I learned yesterday, there's also now an LMS 365 connector in Logic App. Back in the days, it wasn't there. But fortunately, it did support eventing. It kind of was a webhook mechanism we could connect to, get the message into a queue, have a web job listening to it, basically extract the data out we needed, put it in a Logic App. The Logic App could connect to CRM with a CRM connector. So this is a variable solution, basically created for them a holistic data set which they can then leverage into Power BI. So a very valuable solution for that company back in those days, and it still runs. What about hybrid integration solutions? So you have seen some samples of, okay, fine stuff, you saw some cloud Lego type of solutions, basically integration focused and related, but what about hybrid integration solutions? So this, what you see here, is kind of a prototype for a utility company that kind of wanted to present the data or subset of the data in their backend systems to their customers. So it's kind of a self-service type of portal. But getting the data all the way back out of those systems and back into and present that for them was kind of a journey, and it was a tremendous latency. So what we thought about is, okay, we'll connect to these systems, already had that connectivity available through BizTalk Server, extract that data, push that in a queue, and then through a web job, put it into kind of a Redis cast that sits on top of the top portal, enabling the customers to get the data pretty fast. So this is a kind of a hybrid integration solution. Another example, so this is real world, so this is what I'm currently building at a certain customer, is that the customer has some back-end systems, AFAS, and warehouse system, and basically they've decided to move their ERP. They had Unit 4 and they migrated to Dynamics 365 Financial and Operations. And what they kind of need is that all of this data, the financial data, had to be pushed to one central type of system, which is the Dynamics 365. So what happens is we connect to this system through BizTalk Server, basically just, these systems dump their payloads onto a file. BizTalk picks it up, does the transformation to the model that is required for Dynamics 365 type of an entity model. This message gets pushed to a Logic App. The Logic App connects to Dynamics 365, not through a connector. We basically push that data to a recurring job inside Dynamics, and then there's a batch process that's being kicked off to basically digest that data in Dynamics 365. So what happens is the message goes to Dynamics 365, there's a message ID being returned, this is being pushed to another Logic App that kind of listens to the Dynamics 365 by doing kind of a recurring interval every couple of minutes to do this. It would be better if there's kind of an eventing support in there, but it's not there yet. So this is kind of a real-world hybrid integration solution. So I'm giving you some of the examples of, okay, you got cloud native on one end and you got hybrid integration type of solutions on the end. So this is completely integration focused. But what would then the monitoring challenges be? In general, you could say, okay, you got, of course, monitoring challenges, you got network challenges, even security challenges, depending on the connectivity with hybrid and cloud, thinking about maybe express route, VNet, etc. There's some security type of challenges you face, but also monitoring. And that's what I want to focus on. So you've seen these solutions, what type of monitoring challenges you have, what type of monitoring does actually even exist. So you got something like health monitoring, availability, auditing, usage, application logs, etc. There's quite some logging capability that you require for those distributed type of solutions, and whether they be cloud native or whether they be hybrid. So these challenges are basically the fact that you can use some of the capabilities, and I'll touch about them later, but it's kind of, okay, these will services, if you set them up properly, monitoring your solution, they will generate alerts, right? Because on alerts, maybe there's connectivity down, a message doesn't reach to the next phase, the logic app goes down, you can create all kinds of alerts. And you want to make those alerts visible, so you have options to do that through a dashboard. But the other very important thing with a distributed solution is correlation of those log messages or what you're logging, whether it be technical or functional. It's like, okay, where did my message get stuck? So I think Michael 7 will touch upon that too tomorrow, but it's very important. Where did it go wrong? Where's my message actually at this moment? So this is very important depending also on the products you use. So looking at those solutions, looking at monitoring channels. So what's really important? And what important is something that I thought about with regards to this guy. So who knows this show, The Prophet? It's one of America. It's not similar as Shark. This guy is called Marcus Lemonis, and he looks at companies that are struggling or almost going bankrupt. And he looks at it, and if he sees an opportunity to improve that company, he will invest in it, he'll get some kind of deal out of it, and will continue. And what his paradigm is, and what he always does, is what people are working at this company, what kind of process are they using, and what kind of products are they selling. So if I revert this to monitoring, it's kind of the same. What people do you need or are required to do monitoring to keep your systems healthy, etc.? What would the process be? And what are kind of your products or tools do you need to use? So if you look at people, in my view, good people that are kind of really into monitoring, kind of have a talent and passion for it. They have some kind of skill and experience, and that's very important, and some education. So this is very important, even if it's cloud and now cloud native or hybrid, because there's quite some moving parts. And if you're new at cloud, you already heard a lot about the capabilities and features and what it kind of does for you. And it's quite a lot. So what you could do is, with regards to people, is training. So I also do training with my dog, and it's not for the dog, it's actually for me handling the dog properly. So also for me, this is important. So training, one of the things, hands-on labs. You can go through certain exams. If you look at, for instance, hybrid solutions or cloud native solution, a 103 or 900 is pretty important. It also touches governance, touches security, but also touches monitoring. The other thing is, and this is also more in the paradigm if you look more at DevOps, because you build fast, you release fast, that you also learn at your mistakes. So that's more the kind of the paradigm and culture. This is also important if you do operations and if you're involved with monitoring. And even if you got those mistakes, no problem, consolidate those in a knowledge base. If there's other things you need, you can always dive into online to forums. What are important is, and this is what I do with customers as well, as soon as we do transition to support, is guidance and mentoring. Let's look at process. So if you look at monitoring, this is something I learned at an oil company years ago, and that was more BizTalk related, but I still think it applies. Depending on your setup and what you're doing with monitoring, you need some kind of process. You need some kind of support model with regards to one or many of your integration type solutions, even in general. And with this support model, you kind of also have something like, okay, who's responsible for what kind of the roles, and what kind of skills are necessary. So back in the day, they used something like what's called a support model. So I kind of made a drawing out of this. I've used it sometimes in a blog as well. You see issue ticket here, but this can easily also be an Azure alert. It comes somewhere to someone and he has to act upon it. He has to look at it and identify it. Is this a problem I can solve? Or is this a problem that's more data related and I need to get to someone that understands, for instance, Dynamics 365 better, saying, hey, The message got all the way up to recurring job. The status in the end was processed with errors. And then you look into the status, and then it's completely related to how the financial model within Dynamics is being created. So then someone with domain knowledge or knowledge about finance operations needs to identify that message. Okay, this is data related. We have to basically contact the source. So someone who is in control of AFAS or control of the, in this case, the warehouse system, that, hey, the input's wrong, it needs to be corrected. Then, of course, depending on your setup, and if you require someone more knowledgeable, you can push this, and this is more ITIL related to maybe second or third tier support. And this also accounts for the fact that if you still have like a setup with BizTalk, that you also maybe have to refer to some on-premise related stuff when it's network related, SQL related, or whatsoever. So why does I think this support model is correct? And it could be that it's just one or two persons doing this. You don't want to do this with one person. You at least need two or multiple regarding the setup of your solutions. What's important there with two is that if you define some of the roles, and I just made some, just to give you some kind of indication what those roles could be, that these people also have certain responsibilities with regards to operations and the monitoring of those solutions. And with that, it's also important that you identify those people and what kind of skills do they need. So this is kind of another example of potentially what people should know with, when having a process to support hybrid or cloud-native solutions. And then the third part, and this product, but this more deals with the services. So you already had a good example of the improvements and in Serverless 360, but there's quite some tools out there provided by third parties, but also made available by Microsoft themselves. Back in the day, you had the admin console and you have BizTalk 360, and that's kind of, and you had some third-party tools around them. But even in the cloud, you see kind of the same thing. And then it's like, okay, what kind of products do I need for my setup, and what kind of choices do I have to make? And those are quite pretty important with regards to products. So there are quite some tools, and you've seen some examples. So you got the products from Co, which are kind of, Serverless 360, BizTalk 360, Atomic Scope. We, for instance, as Codit, also offer kind of offering. We have the Invictus framework. It's not just intended for monitoring, it's also to get people more productive with BizTalk. There's some paradigm around it. Also consult something I will talk about later, and we have something around Azure as well. You have something like AIMS that more focuses on AI type of monitoring with trending, and then you got tons and tons also if you look at Azure plugins into Azure Monitor. That'll be like tools like New Relic you might have heard of, Dynatrace, and the list kind of goes on. And if you look at monitoring services in general in Azure, so this kind of is from, there's a very interesting document that kind of lays out the land, what those services are within Azure. So on the top you see deep application monitoring, so this is application insights, and then you got on the other side deep infrastructure monitoring. That depends on your networking, your VMs, etc. So they're listed out here in this as well. So there could be service map, there could be log analytics, network monitoring, and so on. And then you have something which is kind of core monitoring. This is Azure Monitor, for instance, which keeps evolving. You got something like the advisor, so giving you advice about some of the stuff you need to do with networking security within your Azure subscription or tenant. And you got like something like log analytics. So those are kind of the core capabilities within Azure. And then you have something around alerting, metric explorer, et cetera, that's available as well, which are kind of shared capabilities. And these are tools that are listed out here. There's another one that's interesting, for instance, this is Kudu. You find this, for instance, with functions, really enables you to do some diagnostic with regards to your app service plan, let's say a web service that's running, or let's say functions. And functions is a kind of a key component within your, let's say, cloud-native integration solutions, or even when it comes to hybrid solutions. For instance, when I depicted web jobs, which is kind of a predecessor to functions. Okay, so now we come to the fact, okay, fine, so you have a process, you have tools, and what kind of tools do I need to pick? And that depends. So if I go back to this cloud-native solution that I depicted initially, right? So if I look at some of those building blocks, you can see, okay, you have this API app, which is in an app service plan. Okay, I can leverage or use application insight. I want to monitor the queues, or you already can, of course, monitor queues. There's some additional capability now in the service bus, but you can also say, okay, I'll use 360. I can use OMS for my logic apps, so make that more visible. And I can use application insight again for my function. So there are quite some tools available. I can also say, okay, I'll get some extra data and push this data, more functional type of data, so the context on messages, I'll log those somewhere and put Power BI on top of it, for instance. But this is more a homegrown type of solution. What I have this type of solution, this is something I see many times within the real world, that there's a logic app with a recurrence ingesting some type of data. Could be weather data, could be financial data, could be exchange data. Just pulls that in, kind of meshes that up or enrich that, and then pushes this further, as you can see, to another logic app into a Cosmos DB. Then if I'm just, and this is something I've written down as well, if I holistically look at this, it's like, okay, let's say this is a pretty vital integration solution, this cloud native integration solution. I have quite some options. In general, with Azure, I can look at the Azure Service Health. It basically tells me something about the services in Azure or in my region that potentially could have an outage or maybe have something like maintenance. You have the advisor, which I already discussed, but if I go to the more lower level, then I can use, for instance, OMS and Log Analytics or even Azure Monitor for those other parts that are in my solution. Or, as you just learned in the previous, I can also choose Serverless 360. So forget about some of these tools, I'll just use Serverless 360 to monitor this integration solution. As you know, for Serverless 360, so in my view, what stands out is kind of you can create this consolidate, or at least manage this type of application I just showed you with just Serverless 360. I create a card, I have all those components in there, I have an app registration, and I basically can manage and operate and monitor that type of solution just using Serverless 360. Giving maybe my first tier support no access to the Azure portal, but just say, you manage this from the first tier by using this tool. I, for instance, can choose for this. Or I could say, no, I'm giving you access to the portal and you kind of assemble this solution and create it yourself. So create the OMS, do something along with analytics, and set up some of the alerting as well. So monitor this solution by leveraging the components in the Azure portal. So this could be another setup or thought about it. Depends on the requirements you have, depends on the setup, depends on the model you want, depends on a lot of things, basically. Now I want to touch something like, okay, challenges also are, if you do end-to-end monitoring, is keeping that solution alive and keeping it available. The other thing is that, and this is something I did for the hybrid solution as well, create a context around a message. For instance, if you do it in BizTalk, there's a context. If it's cloud native, there's not actually a context, but you need the context on that message to do the correlation. For instance, with the band capability you just saw, or the other way. So you want to have functional type of monitoring end-to-end, and you got the technical monitoring. So there's pretty much a distinction between the two. So if I go back to that hybrid solution, this is something how we kind of solve this. What we kind of done is that the messages come in, we kind of created a custom context on those messages, and I'll show you what the context looks like. And this context is being pushed at multiple points. So when the message enters BizTalk, we push out a message, or at least that context that's around it, to a service bus, which then sends it to a logic app. So that's kind of the central logic app that pushes this into a Cosmos DB collection. The message, which then has that format, so the payload and that context are being pushed to a logic app. That logic app just takes that body and pushes it to a recurring job in Dynamics. Message ID comes back, this message ID together with the metadata is being pushed to a queue where there's another logic app doing the get status. The logic app that does the post to Dynamics 365 and does the get state both also log, basically. So one would say, okay, I've sent that message to Dynamics, and the other one would say, I'm getting the status. So basically, we ended up having 4 records. 4 records are being pushed to a central database. It's a Cosmos database, and we kind of put Azure Search on top of it to index it, make it more searchable, and even do things like full text search. And this is on top of a dashboard. The other thing we did through is pushing the mapped files into storage, and through a function, they're accessible through the portal as well. Same as the status. That's an endpoint too we can call, and then we get the status too. So we're not logging the actual status We just log the fact that it's arrived. So this is like more and more picture centralized to the fact, okay, the functional end-to-end monitoring in this case was meant for the financial department because all the financial data on one end needed to go to Dynamics 365 on the other end. And they kind of wanted to know if all the financial data flows are going correctly and they're not being either rejected by Dynamics in this case. So what they could do, can do some queries, basically get that data out of Cosmos DB. They can call out if, let's say, one has processed with errors, call out to that endpoint available in Dynamics saying, hey, what's the status? Or why did it fail? Give me the details. And the other thing is that, also with this, we could get the original file, the mapped file, and look at it like, okay, how did the file look? And maybe relate to the fact why it was rejected. So this is a complete homegrown solution based on some of the criteria that we were facing and reducing costs in a way that we kind of built this in, let's say, 2 or 3 days, the concept, and it kind of works for us. So this is kind of how that functional log looks like. So this is some of the context we put on the message. And as you can see here, it says here right there, BizTalk received. So that's one of the initial message we log and then it continues. This is just a test message. Usually there's more details in this financial log in general. And all of the points, we kind of push that data into a central database. And then we kind of have a dashboard on top of it. So this is a homegrown type of dashboard where we can kind of visualize all the data on all those points and basically provide query capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. And if you click on one of the message, you can reach out, get the status, or even look at the map original file and see, hey, why did it fail in Dynamics? Then the technical monitor side of this hybrid solution is something that we have BizTalk, we connect to all these on-premise systems. There is, of course, a roadmap eventually to move completely to the cloud. But currently today, we're using BizTalk Server 216. And to monitor that kind of thing from a more technical perspective is that, okay, we're using BizTalk 360. Then if we look at the logging more from the technical side, we're using Azure Monitor Alerts, Application Insight, and those kind of tools for the technical side. But then something else, because with Azure, you also deal with costs. And this is something also we deal at the customers, like, okay, we're setting up all these, parts, but they all consume. They're like, most of them are pay-as-you-use, or depending on what kind of tier you choose, for instance, for the server bus, and they generate costs. And this is something you have to be very aware of. So also at this customer, from day one, we start looking at costs. We did some experimenting, and we found out, hey, wait a minute, Cosmos DB multi-master writes for quite some time. That's pretty costly. Initially, we thought about, okay, let's do one Cosmos DB instance per resource group. So we had, of course, the development, tests, acceptance, and production. This is not working either. So we kind of centralized the logging completely, also to reduce cost a bit. So cost is very important. So because it's consumption. So this is something that's being overlooked a lot. So governance is very important, giving people the right access to certain resource groups or even beyond, because it's very easy to just spin up, well, maybe that won't happen that fast, that you really choose a large VM, but it's pretty easy, like, oh, I need a service bus, and oh, why not just use premium? But that's $600 or 600 euros in the end. It's quite some cost. And then if you're not aware of it all, then all of a sudden, hey, where did all these costs come from? And then you kind of have to justify that to your manager or to your customer. So that's why I'm really emphasizing this. From day one, look at your costs, look at your consumption, because that's pretty important. And this is all completely different than if you look at just on-premise solution where you had to deal with the fact that, oh, I have to do licensing, et cetera, et cetera. That's all gone. Maybe still in a hybrid world where there's some capital expenditure, where they already have BizTalk and such, but eventually if you move completely to the cloud, then this is another thing you really have to look at. Beyond, let's say, governance and other aspects, but cost is something you really have to monitor, because it can give surprises, and then it's like, hey, I thought the cloud was cheap, and now it's expensive. So you can monitor that too. So just to recap. So you have cloud and integration solutions, or cloud and hybrid integration solutions. I gave you some examples, some that I use for demo purposes or for my write-ups, but there also are real-world hybrid and integration solutions. And what's really important when you face some of the challenges is that you need to think about, okay, but who are the people supporting this, and do they need training, and are they aware of the fact that they're responsible at certain things, and what's the kind of the process is there in place to keep that smooth, that people know, okay, this is my solution. If it's a DevOps team, it's pretty obvious, then it's of course the DevOps team itself that are responsible for the solution that they ultimately deploy in the cloud. And they need the right tooling for that, or at least get access to the right tooling, depending on how the setup is. Because as you know, there are many products and services. This is a monitoring type of related event. And they put out, they're partners of Microsoft, they put up some good tooling as well, all centered around monitoring because it's really important. You get functional end-to-end type of monitoring that's more on the data side, so what kind of data flows from A to B. And you got technical monitoring. And then the other real important factor with cloud, again, I'll put this out, is monitoring the costs. If you're through a CSP, then you just have to say, hey, give me a portal, give me X, I want to know what my costs are. And in general, I think that you know that with monitoring, there are various challenges available. I think try to point it out there that there are. If you don't have a process, if you don't have the right people, then it's very hard to sustain your solution, whether it's hybrid or whether it's a cloud-native solution. I got some resources here because I think I recently did a review of the AZ-103 book, and I really found a lot of good detail about setting up Azure, something about the governance, but also around the networking, monitoring, that kind of stuff. The other thing that's important is Azure cost management. One is, of course, using the calculator where you start designing your solution, but the other is also how you can reduce costs or how you can monitor it. You have Microsoft monitoring, Codit's Invictus framework, so that's something maybe you can look at as an alternative or maybe something that could fit for your purpose. We as Codit do also a lot of Dynamics 365 integration, so there's also a white paper out. Definitely look at that. That's also available at our booth. I also touch upon some of the monitoring challenges within the 360 blog, not on serverless nodes. That's more tips on logic apps, function, etc. And there's also Middleware Friday, where I sometimes touch upon monitoring. And with that, I hope that I was able to keep you alive and talk a bit about monitoring. So I would say thanks for listening. So my dogs, at least I hope you're like my dog, a happy puppy, and like, hey, cool, this was really useful. And I would say have a great conference. I hope I warmed you up well enough for the next two sessions. So Richard's after me, and then it's Elliot. So there's going to be great architectural type of solutions. So thanks for listening.
Covey.co